The unexpected encounter. The galaxy was a place of endless chaos, filled with countless species, each with their own ambitions and powers. Some were peaceful, others were ruthless conquerors, but all had their own place in the great web of the universe. The aliens in the distant star system had long forgotten about Earth. To them, humans were just another primitive species, unworthy of attention. But that was about to change, and no one, not even the aliens, could have predicted it. The planet was a peaceful one, inhabited by a mix of species who believed in cooperation and mutual prosperity. They had no idea that their lives were about to be altered forever. They had called for help, but what they received was not what they expected. Instead of a diplomatic envoy or a fleet of highly trained soldiers, they got one human, one man, a Deathworlder. At first, the aliens laughed. They thought it was a joke. One human. They asked, exchanging curious glances, what could one human possibly do to us? The human, dressed in simple yet worn combat gear, stood silently before them. His eyes held a cold, calculating look, as though he had seen the worst of the universe and survived it. He didn't speak, just stood there, observing. "Where is the rest of your fleet?" one of the alien ambassadors asked. "We requested reinforcements." The human's lips curled into a faint, almost amused smile. "I am the reinforcements," he said in a calm, almost eerie voice. The aliens couldn't help but chuckle at the absurdity of his words. They had heard of humans before, but only in passing. Stories of primitive tribes on a backwater planet, no different from any other species that would eventually fade into obscurity. They had never met a human, never experienced the sheer unpredictability of a Deathworlder. "What is your mission, human?" the ambassador pressed, trying to maintain an air of authority. "Why are you here?" The human remained silent for a moment, his piercing eyes scanning the alien council. "I'm here to end your arrogance," he said simply, a statement that sent a ripple of confusion across the room. The aliens exchanged uneasy glances. This wasn't the response they were expecting. They were used to dealing with entire fleets, armies of soldiers, and vast displays of power. But this was just one man, and yet there was something unsettling about him. Something that made them question whether this human was really as insignificant as they had initially thought. "Do you understand who we are?" one of the aliens asked, their voice tinged with growing uncertainty. "We are the Galactic Council. We control this sector. Your planet is just a small speck in the galaxy. You can't defeat us. You can't even stand against us." The human's eyes narrowed as he took a slow step forward. "I don't need to defeat you all," he said, his voice cold and calculating. "I just need to make you believe that I can." A tense silence followed, thick with uncertainty. The alien ambassadors looked at one another, unsure of how to respond. They had never encountered a species like this before. There was no fear, no trembling, no signs of weakness. Instead, there was confidence, pure and cold. It was the confidence of someone who had seen the worst and had become something more because of it. The council members couldn't help but feel uneasy. They had underestimated the human before them. He was not like the weak species they had conquered in the past. He wasn't here for negotiation or diplomacy. He wasn't even here for war. He was here for something else, a challenge they didn't understand, a test of power that would shake the very foundations of the galaxy. Without warning, the human moved again, his footsteps deliberate and slow. The room seemed to shrink as he walked toward the center. The aliens, though larger and more powerful in many ways, took a step back. It was as though his very presence made them nervous. And still, they had no idea why. "I'll give you a choice," the human said, breaking the silence. "You can either try to stop me and risk your entire galaxy, or you can stand aside and watch as I reshape this galaxy in my image." The alien council was taken aback. They had never encountered a species that spoke so boldly. No one had dared to challenge their rule, not in such a direct way. Not like this. A murmur ran through the room as the realization started to settle in. This was not just another human. This was something else entirely. Sam held up a hand, cutting him off. You've made the mistake of thinking I'm here to fight on your terms. I don't need to fight your battles. I just need to disrupt them. With a flick of his wrist, Sam activated a small device hidden in his pocket. Instantly, the large view screen in front of him came to life, displaying the fleet that the Council had so arrogantly sent to neutralize him. But something was wrong. The ships were off course, their trajectory now a clear path toward a deadly, uncharted asteroid belt. The officer's eyes widened in horror as he realized what had happened. The fleet was heading straight into the belt, and there was nothing they could do to stop it. Sam had manipulated the Council's own communication channels, feeding false information, altering the navigational systems. And just like that, their fleet was on the brink of annihilation. They don't understand, Sam muttered, shaking his head. They don't understand that it's not about brute force. It's about knowing your enemy. And they don't know me. The officer turned, panic creeping into his features. But before he could utter another word, the screen flickered again. This time, it showed a transmission from Sam's fleet. It was small, barely noticeable on the vast scale of galactic warfare, but it was there. The message was simple. We're ready. Prepare for impact. Sam stepped away from the console, his hands resting at his sides as he watched the chaos unfold on the screen. The alien officer stood frozen, the weight of the situation finally dawning on him. I told you, Sam said, his voice calm and cold. You underestimated me. In the blink of an eye, the Council's might was crumbling. The fleet was scattered, their ships colliding with the asteroid belt, thrown into disarray. It was a move that no one, not even the most seasoned military strategist, would have expected. Sam had shattered the invincible facade of the Galactic Council, and in its place was the raw, unpredictable power of a Deathworlder. As the screen flickered, Sam turned away, knowing that this was only the beginning. The galaxy had just learned what humans were capable of, and in the end, it was the Council that would be left to clean up the mess, forever haunted by the terrifying reality of humanity's might. A ripple in the galaxy. The events that transpired over the next few hours were a blur of activity. Sam Carter, the lone human who had shaken the foundations of galactic power, remained a calm figure in the chaos. The alien fleet, now a scattered mess of damaged ships and confused commanders, would take time to regroup. Yet, in that brief moment of victory, Sam knew that the real test was yet to come. He stood in the heart of his ship, a sleek and well-equipped vessel that barely resembled the brute force ships of the Galactic Council. While the enemy had relied on sheer numbers, Sam's ship was a reflection of humanity's ingenuity. It was built for speed, precision, and adaptability. The Council's fleet, though far larger, had been designed for dominance in space battles, something Sam had planned to exploit. His fleet wasn't large, but it was far more efficient. Around him, the crew of the ship moved with purpose, monitoring communications and preparing for the next phase of their plan. Despite the initial success, there was still much to do. The Council had suffered a blow, but they were not finished yet. Sam could feel it. They would regroup, retaliate, and try to finish what they had started. The question wasn't if they would strike again, but when. On the other side of the galaxy, the Council's leadership was already in motion. The catastrophic failure of their fleet had triggered an emergency meeting among the top military commanders. Their arrogance, once their greatest asset, had now turned into a weakness, one they were quick to realize they could no longer afford. "We will not tolerate this disruption," said High Commander Vextar, his voice an icy rasp as he addressed the Council's leaders. His antennae twitched with a mix of anger and disbelief. "Humans are nothing more than a nuisance. We will crush them with everything we have." His words were met with nods from his fellow council members. But beneath the anger and frustration, a seed of doubt had been planted. Sam's unexpected move had proven one thing. Humans were not to be underestimated. The galaxy's most feared empire, one that had held control for centuries, had been caught off guard by a single human. The idea that this nuisance could now shake the balance of power was unsettling. While Vextar rallied his forces, Sam Carter remained focused. He had spent his entire life preparing for moments like this. His training on Earth had been grueling, pushing him to the limits of his physical and mental abilities. But more than anything, it was his survival instinct, honed through centuries of human history, that gave him the edge. Humans had survived wars, natural disasters, and environmental collapse on their home planet. What could a galaxy full of aliens do to stop that? As the hours ticked by, Sam's ship cruised through the asteroid field, making its way to the edge of the galaxy. There, the most unexpected thing happened. A signal came through, encrypted and full of strange, alien characters. It was a transmission from the Council's secretive and largely unknown covert military faction. Sam didn't hesitate. He cracked the code with ease. It read, "Human, you've made your point, but do not mistake us. You are not a match for the full force of the Galactic Council. Your moment of victory is fleeting." Sam let out a slow breath. They had underestimated him again. He wasn't just a soldier. He wasn't just a Deathworlder. He was a strategist, a master at reading the flow of a battle before it even began. And he had one key advantage. The Council didn't know the first thing about humans. As Sam analyzed the message, he realized that the Council's next move would be their most dangerous yet. They were preparing to deploy their greatest weapon, a superweapon capable of turning entire planets into dust with a single strike. But the arrogance that had led them to believe they were invincible was the same arrogance that would be their downfall. They had no idea what they were up against. "Get ready," Sam muttered under his breath, his fingers moving swiftly over the controls. They won't know what hit them. Meanwhile, across the galaxy, the Council's weapon was nearing activation. It was a weapon unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. A massive planet-destroying missile designed to obliterate anything that stood in their way. The plan was simple: strike humanity at the heart, cripple their will to fight, and send a message that the Galactic Council's wrath was unstoppable. But Sam had anticipated this move. While they focused on overwhelming force, Sam was focused on deception, infiltration, and sabotage. He had already planted seeds of doubt within the Council's ranks, and now it was time to finish what he had started. With one final flourish, he sent a pulse through the Council's communication channels, disrupting their plans just as they were about to launch their weapon. For a moment, all was silent. Then, chaos erupted. The Council's weapon had been hijacked, its launch code scrambled. It was a simple act of strategy, but it left the Council leaders reeling. The threat that had once loomed so large was now a mere memory, flickering in the midst of their uncertainty. Sam leaned back in his chair, the faintest smile playing on his lips. He knew that the Council wasn't done yet. They would recover, rebuild, and come after him with even greater ferocity. But the one thing they would never be able to take from him was his edge, his ability to think, to adapt, to survive. As the screen flickered, showing the chaos of the Council's crumbling plans, Sam muttered to himself, "This is just the beginning." And so, the ripples of his actions began to spread. The galaxy, once secure in the illusion of its unchallenged power, now faced the true force of humanity. One human, one Deathworlder, had turned their world upside down. But the war, Sam knew, had only just begun. The Council's retaliation. The galaxy had hardly recovered from the shock of humanity's audacious strike before the true might of the Galactic Council began to show itself. What Sam Carter had done, his small fleet's assault, and the sabotage of the superweapon, had left a lasting impression. But now the Council was enraged. They had underestimated the humans once, but now they were determined to erase that mistake. Sam and his fleet had moved swiftly after the initial victory, exploiting every opportunity to gather information and strengthen their position. But he knew the Council would retaliate. They were too powerful, too resourceful, and too prideful to let one human, one single Deathworlder, stand in their way. The Council was a vast entity, and in the coming days, they would throw everything they had at him. Across the galaxy, the Council's military leaders convened in an emergency summit. The High Command was in disarray, and there were heated arguments about what the next step should be. Some suggested sending out a larger fleet. Others argued that their reputation alone should be enough to bring humans to their knees. But there was one undeniable truth that every leader in that room could not ignore. Humanity was different. They weren't like the other races they had conquered. They were resourceful. They fought for their survival like no other species in the galaxy. High Commander Vextar, the Council's ruthless strategist, slammed his fist on the table, his antennae twitching in agitation. We have underestimated them for too long. It's time to show this human what true power is. We will use everything at our disposal. We will not leave this sector until every human ship is destroyed and every human is eliminated. As the Council's commanders rallied around Vextar's plan, Sam and his fleet were already preparing for their next move. The Council's retaliatory strike wasn't just a possibility, it was inevitable. He knew they would come with force, but Sam had something they didn't: time. Time to plan, time to fortify, and time to prepare for the worst. Sam stood before the holographic map in the war room of his ship. His eyes traced the lines of the Council's known fleets, the planets they controlled, and the routes they could take to get to them. The intelligence he had gathered from his earlier victory was invaluable. It gave him a clearer picture of the Council's movements, and more importantly, their weaknesses. We're not going to be waiting for them, Sam said, his voice low but steady. We're going to strike first. They think they can intimidate us, but we're going to remind them who they're dealing with. His officers exchanged glances, their faces set with determination. Sam had proven himself a capable leader before, but now the stakes were higher. The galaxy was watching, waiting to see what humanity would do next, and Sam wasn't about to let them down. The fearsome Deathworlder had already demonstrated that he could take on the Council. Now he was going to show them that humanity wasn't just a threat to be reckoned with, it was a force that could reshape the galaxy. The plan was simple, yet risky. Sam would lead a surprise offensive against one of the Council's strategic military bases. It was an audacious move, but it was the only way to put the Council on the back foot and buy humanity some much-needed breathing room. If they could disable one of the Council's key strongholds, it would send a powerful message. Humanity was not to be trifled with. As the fleet neared the base, Sam's heart pounded in his chest. The plan had to work. There was no room for error. The Council's forces were formidable, but Sam knew the terrain better than anyone. The Council's reliance on sheer force and overwhelming numbers would be their downfall. They would never expect a strike so bold, so direct. "Ready the ships," Sam ordered. "We're going in. No turning back." The tension was palpable as the fleet engaged the Council's defenses. Explosions lit up the void of space as Sam's ships darted in and out of enemy fire. His crew moved with precision, executing maneuvers that no one expected from a force of such small size. The Deathworlder fleet had become a legend in its own right, a symbol of humanity's surprising strength and resilience. At the heart of the battle, Sam's ship tore through the Council's defense lines. His heart raced as the ships around him exploded in brilliant bursts of light, but he kept his focus, moving forward. The enemy was faltering. The surprise of the attack, the audacity of it all, had thrown the Council into chaos. With a final push, Sam's fleet disabled the Council's military base. Their defenses were breached, their ships scattered, and their leaders in disarray. For the first time, the Galactic Council understood what it was like to be on the receiving end of a well-planned attack. Sam watched from the bridge of his ship as the base went dark. He knew this wasn't the end. The Council would regroup, they would retaliate. But for now, humanity had struck a decisive blow. "We've done it," one of the officers said, his voice filled with awe. Sam's face remained stoic. This is just the beginning. The galaxy had been changed. The Council, once invincible in their eyes, had been made to bleed. The tide had turned, and humanity was no longer the underdog. Sam Carter, the lone human warrior, had set the stage for something bigger, something that would echo across the galaxy. And as the fleet pulled away, leaving the destroyed base in their wake, Sam's eyes hardened with resolve. The fight was far from over. The Council would come for them. But this time, they wouldn't find an easy target. This time, they would find a fight like no other. The Council strikes back. The shockwave of Sam Carter's victory sent ripples through the Galactic Council. Their once unshakable confidence had been shattered, and every commander, strategist, and official from the highest to the lowest levels felt the sting of humanity's defiance. The Council had lost a military base, but they hadn't lost everything. There were still planets to conquer, still fleets to command, and most importantly, they still had the power to crush this upstart human threat. The Galactic Council convened in an emergency summit, this time with the full might of their leadership present. High Commander Vextar paced back and forth, his claws clicking against the metal floor as he raged against their failure. He had underestimated humanity once, and now the cost was becoming clear. He was not about to make the same mistake again. "They've made a mockery of us." Vextar's voice was a low growl. "This will not stand. We are the Galactic Council. We will not allow a single human to defy our authority." The room was filled with murmurs of agreement. The other council members, leaders of vast civilizations, nodded solemnly. This was no longer just about stopping Sam Carter. It was about restoring the Council's image as the supreme power in the galaxy. A brilliant strategist from the Zurich system, General Xila, spoke up. "We cannot just send another fleet and hope to crush them. This human has proven he can outmaneuver us. We must change our approach." There was a brief silence as everyone considered her words. The usual methods, the overwhelming force, the vast fleets, would not work against a cunning enemy like humanity. Xila continued, her voice cold and calculating. "We need to get inside their minds. We need to find their weaknesses. If we break their morale, if we destroy their will to fight, the rest of the galaxy will fall in line." Vextar's sharp eyes gleamed. "You're suggesting we target more than their ships. We target their hearts, their leaders." "Exactly," General Xila confirmed. "We hit them where it hurts. If we can capture Carter, or better yet, make him fear for the survival of his people, we can break the resistance before it truly gains momentum." A new plan began to form within the Council's war room. A psychological strike. They would send out their most skilled agents, infiltrators, and spies to spread fear among the humans, to sow discord within their ranks, and most importantly, to find a way to capture Sam Carter alive. Sam had made a name for himself, and the Council knew that to destroy the resistance, they had to destroy the symbol of humanity's defiance. The Deathworlder, who had already proven himself a master strategist, had to be removed from the battlefield. Back on Sam's ship, the mood was cautious but optimistic. The attack on the Council's base had been a tremendous success, but they knew that victory would only be temporary. The Council was already regrouping, preparing their retaliation. Sam had known the risks of provoking such a powerful enemy, but now he understood that the Council would stop at nothing to crush humanity. As he stood on the bridge of his ship, Sam watched as the stars drifted by. The reality of the situation was sinking in. The Council's response was coming, and it would be unlike anything humanity had faced before. "Status report," Sam ordered. Lieutenant Jara, his communications officer, turned to him with a grim look. "We've intercepted several encrypted signals. The Council is gathering their forces. This isn't just a counterattack, Sam. They're preparing something far more dangerous. They're coming for us." Sam felt his heart tighten. The next battle would be unlike anything humanity had faced before. The Council wasn't just coming for his fleet. They were coming for his people. They were coming to end the spark of rebellion that had begun on this small, wild world. "Prepare the fleet," Sam ordered, his voice calm despite the tension rising in his chest. This fight is far from over. We're not running. We're going to make them regret ever underestimating humanity. But the threat wasn't just in the vast fleets that the Council was amassing. There were whispers now, rumors of a new weapon, a force the Council was bringing to bear. Something so terrifying, so powerful, that it could bring an entire world to its knees. A weapon so deadly, it could decimate entire populations with a single strike. Sam clenched his fists. He had dealt with overwhelming odds before, but this felt different. If this new weapon was real, then it might not just be the fleets they needed to worry about. It was clear now. The Council was desperate. And when the Council was desperate, there was no telling how far they would go. "What's our next move, Sam?" Lieutenant Jara asked, breaking the silence. Sam's eyes narrowed. "We get ahead of them. We're not waiting to see what they have planned. We'll strike first, before they can unleash this weapon. We hit them hard, we hit them fast, and we show them that no matter what they throw at us, humanity will fight back." The crew nodded, the resolve on their faces hardening. They were ready to follow Sam into whatever awaited them in the coming battle. As Sam made his preparations, he knew the stakes were higher than ever. The Council had declared war, but this time, they would not be dealing with a simple rebellion. This time, they would face a force driven by survival, led by a Deathworlder who had never known defeat. And as the stars shone cold and distant outside his window, Sam Carter knew one thing for sure. Humanity was ready for whatever came next. The Council's ultimate weapon. The Council's forces were gathering, and the weight of their new weapon hung heavy in the air. For Sam Carter and his crew, the stakes had never been higher. They had seen the Council's military might, they had fought against overwhelming odds, and they had emerged victorious. But now, there was something far worse on the horizon. The Council's secret weapon. It was something Sam had never expected. A weapon so devastating that it made even the seasoned warriors of his fleet pause with uncertainty. The Council had spent years developing it in secret, hiding it away on one of their most fortified planets. And now, they were ready to unleash it. But the rumors of this weapon had spread quickly across the galaxy. It wasn't just the humans who were afraid. Every species in the galaxy that had once bowed to the Council's might was now terrified. What could possibly be powerful enough to destroy the Deathworlders and break the resistance that had begun to form? "Lieutenant Jara, any word on this weapon?" Sam asked as he stood at the bridge of his ship, staring at the swirling stars outside. Jara, his trusted communications officer, turned to him with a strained expression. "We've intercepted a few transmissions, Sam, but they're heavily encrypted. From what we can gather, it's not just a weapon. It's a system, a fully integrated platform that can harness the power of entire star systems. It can disable entire fleets with a single strike." Sam's heart sank as the implications hit him. A weapon like that would change everything. The Council could wipe out entire fleets of humanity's allies before they even had a chance to engage. Worse, it could strike directly at Earth, and no fleet, no matter how powerful, could stop it. "Is there anything we can do to stop it?" Sam asked, his voice steady, though his mind raced with possibilities. Jara hesitated. "We've been studying their communications, and we think we found a weakness. It's located on a planet in the Xeric system, and it's heavily guarded. We may have a chance if we can disable their power source before they can launch the weapon." Sam considered this for a moment. It was a long shot, but if they could disable the weapon before it was activated, humanity's chances for survival would increase dramatically. They couldn't afford to let the Council gain control of such a devastating tool. "We'll need to move fast," Sam said, turning to his officers. "Prepare the fleet for an immediate strike. We're going to hit them where it hurts." The crew sprang into action, the hum of the engines intensifying as the fleet prepared for a high-speed jump into enemy territory. The Xeric system was heavily guarded, but if there was a weakness, Sam was determined to find it. As they made the jump through the stars, the tension on the ship was palpable. Sam stood on the bridge, his gaze fixed ahead, his mind focused on the mission. This was the kind of fight humanity had been preparing for, the kind of fight they could not afford to lose. "We're entering the Zarek system," Jara called out, her voice tense. "Enemy fleets are detected on the outer edges. We've got a window of about 15 minutes before they'll be fully alerted." Sam's pulse quickened. "Then we'll use that time wisely. All units, prepare to launch." The fleet of Deathworlders moved swiftly, silently, as they closed in on their target. The planet ahead was shrouded in defense systems, energy shields, automated drones, and a fleet of council ships orbiting the planet, ready to defend it with everything they had. But Sam knew that speed and surprise were on their side. If they acted quickly enough, they might be able to strike before the council could fully respond. "Ready to deploy the first wave," Lieutenant Jara reported, her fingers dancing over the console. "We're moving in." "Launch it," Sam ordered. As the first wave of attack ships hurtled toward the planet, Sam watched from the bridge, his eyes narrowing. They had come for the weapon, and they would stop at nothing to find it. The battle for the Zarek system had begun. The Council, unaware of the swift assault, scrambled to organize its defense. Ships rushed to intercept, but the Deathworlders were faster, more lethal. Each strike from Sam's fleet tore through enemy vessels like a hot knife through butter. But it wasn't just the battle above the planet that mattered. Sam had one objective: to find the core of the Council's weapon, the power source that would enable it to fire. As his forces stormed the planet's surface, Sam moved swiftly through the dense jungle of Zarek, his senses on high alert. The air was thick with tension, and the ground trembled beneath his boots. His team had landed deep in enemy territory, and time was running out. "We're close," Sam said, gripping his weapon tightly. The deep red sky above him seemed to pulse with an unnatural energy, as if the planet itself were aware of the battle raging in the skies above. They had reached the facility, a massive underground complex buried beneath the jungle. As they breached the outer defenses, Sam could feel the weight of the Council's power pressing down on him. But it wasn't enough to deter him. He knew that if they failed here, the Council would have everything they needed to destroy humanity. The countdown had begun, but Sam was determined. He would take down this weapon before it could be unleashed on the galaxy. "Move, move, move." Sam shouted to his team as they stormed through the facility, guns raised and ready for whatever lay ahead. And as the doors to the weapons control room opened, the full scale of the Council's creation revealed itself, an artificial intelligence capable of manipulating energy on a galactic scale. The power source sat at the heart of the facility, an immense, pulsating core that could annihilate entire fleets in seconds. "We have to shut it down now," Sam shouted. But just as his team advanced, a chilling voice echoed through the room. "It's already too late." The doors slammed shut, and Sam Carter was faced with a new challenge, a threat far more dangerous than he had ever imagined. The final battle for survival. The room was suffocating with tension as Sam and his team faced the chilling voice that echoed through the control room. The doors slammed shut behind them, and the sound of the metallic lock clicking into place reverberated through the chamber. They were trapped. "We don't have much time," Sam muttered, his eyes scanning the control room. The massive, pulsating core at the center of the room hummed with a low, menacing energy. The air crackled with the power it contained, and Sam could feel the weight of the Council's weapon bearing down on them. "Who's there?" Lieutenant Jara demanded, her voice shaking slightly with urgency. Her hand hovered over the weapon at her side, but Sam knew that this wasn't a fight they could win with guns alone. A figure appeared from the shadows, stepping into the dim light of the control room. It was a Council officer, tall, cloaked in dark robes, and exuding an aura of unshakable confidence. His eyes gleamed with cold intelligence. "You should have known," the figure said, his voice smooth and chilling. "This was never about victory for you, human." Sam's pulse quickened. This was no ordinary Council officer. This was someone who knew the depths of their plans, someone who had been at the heart of the Council's secret weapon project. And now, Sam realized, They were too late. The weapon is already in motion. The officer continued. The power source is connected to a network of stations across the galaxy. You think you can stop it here? You are naive. We're not naive, Sam replied, his voice steady despite the weight of the situation. And we're not giving up. The officer smiled coldly. I admire your courage, but it won't be enough. You've walked right into our trap. You're not just fighting for your survival anymore. You're fighting for your extinction. Sam's mind raced. If this officer was right, they had been playing right into the Council's hands. The weapon's activation wasn't just a matter of destroying one planet. It was a networked system that could wipe out entire fleets, entire civilizations, in the blink of an eye. There was no escaping this, but Sam wasn't ready to give in. Not yet. Get to the core, Sam ordered his team, his voice sharp. We need to shut it down, no matter what it takes. The officer chuckled darkly, taking a slow step forward. It's already too late for that, he said, his hand moving toward a console by the wall. But don't worry, I'll make it quick for you. With a swift motion, the officer pressed a button. The air seemed to hum, and a series of alarms blared throughout the room. The walls began to shift, and the core's energy level spiked, glowing brighter and brighter with each passing second. Sam's heart raced. The countdown had begun, and there was no time to waste. He and his team bolted toward the core, weapons drawn, determined to disable the weapon before it was too late. We have to break through, Sam shouted as they approached the heart of the room. The officer, however, was not far behind, his fingers moving swiftly over the controls. We will see who prevails, the officer said, his expression turning into a sneer. As Sam reached the core, he saw the glowing energy lines that connected it to the galactic network. The core was surrounded by an impenetrable energy field, an invisible barrier that was keeping them from disabling it. Get me a way through, Sam shouted to Jara, who was frantically working at a nearby console. I'm trying, she yelled back. It's hardwired into the network. I need more time. The officer's laugh echoed behind them. You can't outsmart a system built by the greatest minds in the galaxy. Your time is over. But Sam didn't back down. This was the moment they had prepared for. It was not just a fight for their survival. It was a fight for the survival of every species the Council had ever oppressed. They couldn't fail. We're not done yet, Sam shouted. We're just getting started. With one final push, Jara found a weakness in the core's energy field. It flickered, and for a brief moment, the barrier wavered. Now, Sam yelled. His team moved with lightning speed, and in that moment, they made their move. Guns blazed, and the officer's attempts to stop them were futile. Sam and his crew rushed forward, their hands working in unison to destroy the core's connections. The energy field around the core flickered again, and with a deafening crack, it collapsed. The hum of the core died down, and for the first time in what felt like an eternity, the air was still. We did it, Jara said, breathing a sigh of relief as she slumped against the console. But Sam's eyes were already scanning the room. The officer, still standing, was seething with rage. You may have stopped one weapon, he said, his voice low and venomous. But you cannot stop the Council. You cannot stop what's coming.